I'd like to welcome everyone here today and thank you for being with us for this exciting announcement. I'd like to thank Premier Ball for being here for this announcement today, as well as some staff from Climate Change Branch, Kyle and Gerald. I'd also like to acknowledge Nick Whalen, MP for St. John's East, my MP, who's here on behalf of the federal government. The federal government has been an integral part of making the program we are announcing here today a reality. Today's announcement is just one example of what we can deliver through strong intergovernmental cooperation. I'd also like to welcome members of the media and everyone else who's joined us here this morning. We are all here to mark an important investments for a greener environment that will all support our economy. Given my role as the Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Labour, I'm so pleased to be here to launch this program under the Low Carbon Economy Leadership Fund. I would now like to invite the Honourable Premier Dwight Ball, Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, to speak on behalf of the provincial government. Premier Ball.
Well, thank you, Bernie. So, the Fluvarium, it's great to be here, and we all know that this particular building plays such a prominent role in educating the public. We get a chance to come here quite often, but Dan was just telling me 29 years ago, and Dan's here today. I want to welcome Dan and thank him for allowing us to be here again. This is always a site and a visit that I always love coming to, and I know lots of students come through, great story here, but it really, once again, shows the facilities that we have in our province as we promote a sustainable environment. So we're here today to launch two new programs designed to engage the community in efforts to protect our environment, working with all sectors of our economy to help lower greenhouse gas emissions and tackle climate change. Addressing climate change requires global action. So for those people that do not think that global change or that climate change is happening, I can tell you need look no further than some of the devastating weather events that we've seen even within our own province within recent years. So it's important that no matter where we live, that all jurisdictions step up and do the job and accept their role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So as a province in Newfoundland and Labrador, we are committed to doing our part in being part of that solution. We are working with the federal government and other provinces and territories to implement the Pan-Canadian framework on clean growth and climate change. And I remember at a table in Vancouver a few years ago when this agreement was struck on the Pan-Canadian framework, and where all provinces and territories were there actively taking part. The national framework sets out the approach to meeting Canada's emissions on reduction targets, growing the economy, and building resilience to climate change. Solutions to climate change exist, and it is critical that we effectively respond to climate change to sustain strong economic growth long term. Climate change and the initiatives are just not about doing our part in providing solutions, but there's opportunities for job growth throughout Canada and in Newfoundland and Labrador. This morning's announcement is another example of the strong relationship that we have with our federal government, and it's great to be here with Nick again this morning. Our government has been able to leverage significant federal funding over the past few years, and we're seeing results again here today. Now, when you talk about innovation, I think you don't need to look any further than Newfoundland and Labrador when you look for creativity and innovation that we see within our province. So today's announcement and others that we've made in the past once again demonstrates some huge potential for new innovation and transition to a low-carbon global economy. It is for this reason that recently we announced a 5-year climate change action plan. To meet the ambitious targets in the plan, we must take ambitious action to support our transition to a low-carbon economy. This includes a joint funding agreement of nearly $90 million under the Low Carbon Economy Leadership Fund. That's over 4 years. One of the ways that we're using this money is to promote energy efficiency and help lower fuel bills. We already have launched 3 new programs. We've talked about the Home Energy Savings Program. We've announced the energy efficiency and fuel switching in public buildings. also the energy efficiency in oil-heated homes. And this is recent, just a recent announcement, but includes oil-heated homes for insulation and new modern thermostats. These programs, combined with two new ones, which I'm about to launch today, will assist in creating jobs, growing industry, as well develop a clean economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to announce that the provincial and the federal governments are investing $40 million over the next 3 years for two new programs under the Low Carbon Economy Leadership Fund. The first program, thank you. The first program is the Climate Change Challenge Fund program. The provincial government is contributing some $10.26 million for this program to support eligible proponents with energy efficiency and fuel switching projects that result in significant greenhouse gas reductions. So you might wonder who could qualify for these programs. You could be a large industrial company in our province. You could be a small, medium-sized company. You could be someone involved in agriculture, forestry, manufacturing, mining industries. You could be a commercial, municipal, not-for-profit, and of course Indigenous groups around our province. So this is the Climate Change Challenge Fund program. Secondly is the Freight Transportation Fuel Efficiency Program. This is worth nearly $2 million for carriers and owner-operators to install fuel savings devices for heavy-duty trucks and trailers. As you might know, there's 34% of the greenhouse gas emissions comes from the transportation sector. Not unusual. We see this numbers like this in other provinces as well. So we are launching this program to assist the freight trucking sector, reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the freight trucking sector, improve fuel efficiency, and improve the competitiveness of those companies. So lastly, I'm also pleased to announce that we are leveraging more funding from the Energy Efficiency and Fuel Switching in Public Buildings program to another $17 million. So this is even extra money that will go to support our climate change action plan. I'm also pleased to say that by 2030, the programs developed under the Low Carbon Economy Leadership Fund will reduce and deliver 882,000 tons of cumulative greenhouse gas reductions and nearly 240 direct person years of employment. So as I said, this is about carbon reduction or greenhouse gas reductions, but also about producing jobs in Newfoundland and Labrador. And it ties neatly with the way forward, improving our outcomes for residents and leveraging federal funding to implement climate change. These investments are in line with the balanced approach government is taking to finances, the environmental services, and economic development. So I would like to thank the federal minister, along with Nick Whalen here today, for partnering with us in these programs. I encourage applicants to consider applying for these programs. Applications or more information can be found at the website on Municipal Affairs and Environment. So ladies and gentlemen, it's another step in the 5-year Climate Change Action Plan. It's another step in the partnership that we have with our federal government. And Newfoundland and Labrador, once again, it's doing its part as a solution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you very much.
In the last few years, extreme weather events have become almost routine. They're more frequent, more ubiquitous, and more devastating for communities. In 2018 alone, weather stories dominated the news, from record wildfires in British Columbia, deadly heat waves in Ontario and Quebec, and devastating flooding in New Brunswick. In 2019, there can be no more delays. No more trying to decide whether or not climate change is real. We need to take action. And later this morning, I'll be joining students from high schools and junior highs across the city as they participate in Greta Thunberg's climate protest, the Friday strike for climate change, as they march along Prince Philip Parkway. In fact, Newfoundland and Labrador, as a gateway to the Arctic, also needs to realize that Canada's Arctic is warming at 3 times the rate of the global average. A warming Arctic means melting glaciers, rising sea levels. PEI is shrinking by a foot a year, and we can only imagine what a 1-meter sea level rise by 2021 would mean for Newfoundland and Labrador. It's not just Eastport Beach, it's not just Northern Bay Sands, it's the roads, the bridges, the infrastructure that would be damaged, which is why we need a more resilient approach to addressing climate change. And it's great to partner with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador in this. They've been a true partner from the get-go. As everyone knows, one of the first actions we did as a government federally is to send a massive delegation to Paris for the COP meetings that year in 2015 to sign the Paris Agreement and to set some targets for real and measurable impact on addressing climate change. If we know that if we can find measurable and important and strategic ways to reduce our carbon footprint, we can get to our 2030 targets. And that's why I'm so proud to be here today with Minister Ball and Minister Davis, and to announce that the government of Canada is investing $11.4 million in two of Newfoundland and Labrador's programs that will help drive down emissions. Up to $2.8 million for the Freight Transportation Fuel Initiative that the Premier just spoke about, as well as $8.6 million for the Climate Change Challenge Fund in the efforts of energy efficiency and fuel switching in public buildings. And these are great initiatives. As the Premier mentioned, this is part of our partnership in a $90 billion program, $44 million from the federal government to help Newfoundland and Labrador meet its climate change targets. Nationally, we expect that programs like these will not only help us meet our Paris targets and reduce climate change, but it's also estimated that they will create up to 118,000 jobs a year in facilitating the transition to a clean economy. These are good, well-paying jobs for entrepreneurs, contractors, and enterprising, hardworking Canadians. By finding clean solutions, we're helping Canada create clean jobs, green jobs for the future. Clean and green jobs for the children that will be marching along Prince Philip Parkway later this morning. By finding clean solutions, we're helping Canadians also save our planet. Investing in energy efficiency is not only part of Canada's Climate Action Plan, which includes 50 practical and supportive measures, but it's also just makes good economic sense. Many of the initiatives that are supported would make sense on their own and would have a good rate of return. By providing these additional incentives for businesses, we just increase the rate of return they have on investing their capital in energy efficiency. And of course, as you all know, the signature initiative of our government's efforts on meeting our Paris targets is our price on pollution, which by 2030 will actually be responsible, we expect, for half of the reductions in our carbon pollution in the country. So we've made a commitment, we're taking action, and we couldn't take this action or make these commitments without the great partnership we have with the province. The province has been with us lockstep along the way. They have not relied on the federal backstop for the price on pollution. They've implemented their own, unlike New Brunswick, Ontario, Saskatchewan. And so they've really demonstrated leadership with this right from the get-go. The federal and provincial governments know that climate change is real, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we address it in a comprehensive and economic way. Thank you very much.